Alright guys, what's going on? Here I'm going to work through the solutions to the homework assignment, and your work will be to make corrections to your homework if necessary and turn that in. And it's nice just to know if you did it right or whatever. So anyway, this will be part of your work due tomorrow. Let's get started. So, name all congruent sides and angles and find all missing measures. Alright, so for A, let's do work for A right here. Alright, I'm given a congruent statement, and that's really all I need to answer A. This way I know that angle X is congruent to angle M. I know that angle Y is congruent to angle N. And I know that angle Z is congruent to angle L. Alright, sides next. So again, we just use the congruent statement. Right, and then we can do XZ and ML. Alright, so for sides, XY is congruent to MN. YZ is congruent to NL. And XZ is congruent to ML. Of course, hopefully you remember that we could always change the order of the letters here, because order doesn't matter when we start talk about segments. Anyway, let's go ahead to the second part here, which is find all missing measures. So we know that N is congruent to Y. All right, so this must be 124. We know that X is congruent to M. So this must be 33. All right, so then I can figure out what this missing angle is, be it Z or L, pretty easily just by doing the triangle sum theorem. If you remember, that means that they all add up to 180 degrees. So 180 is equal to 124 plus 33 plus some unknown. I'm just going to call it M, just because we already have an M there. All right. So 124 plus 33, that's what, 157? Right? Yeah. So then 180 minus 157, what, 23? Yeah. So M is 23, which means that Z is also 23. So there's our missing angles. All right, write another congruent statement, B. Oops. All right, so for B, running out of colors. You really should give you more, So when they say write another one, that means I actually just change the order, which I can. Change the order around, that's fine. Just make sure that they're lined up correctly. Let's go ahead and finish this up so that we don't make any silly mistakes. All right, I'm just gonna look at the diagram, make something up. How about Y, X, Z? And and why don't we actually be even more coy about it and put this on the right-hand side, just because it doesn't make a difference, and I'm showing off, whatever. All right, so it's important now, Y. Y is here. What's the single hash mark one? There it is, N. So N, X is the double hash one, which should be M here. And then, of course, we'll just do L. There we go. Okay. Number 2. Show that these are congruent. In order to show congruence, that really means to show all 6 parts are congruent. And we're, of course, talking about like all angles and all sides, just like we did up there, okay? So looks like we've taken care of just about everything. We have 3 angles, taken care of. Now all we have to do is think about the 3 sides, and I don't have 3 sides. I only have 2 sides. which means one's left, and that would be this one. And it happens to be shared, which means it must be congruent to itself via and remember, reflexive property. Okay, and then therefore I can go ahead and say that triangle YZX is congruent to triangle WXZ. Of course, you'd have to state the given. This is by definition of congruence. Essentially, congruent triangles, if you want to be fancy about it. You'd have to state all the given way up there first, but I think we can go ahead and do that. You just have to match up the sides, you know, match up the angles and state that. You can do that. Okay, here we're going to find the values of x and y. We're going to first invoke the third angles theorem. What do I mean by that? Well, this angle here is 90, which means that this angle here must be, you guessed it, 90 as well, because they are supplementary, linear pair, and adjacent. That's what linear pair is, right? And that's 90, and 180 minus 90 gives you 90. It's a classic situation. So I'm going to go ahead and mark up this last angle, double hashed, and that means this one has to be as well, because remember, if two angles are congruent in triangles, so is the third. No? Anyway. Okay, so students said, oh, we should probably work that out. All right, so I know that this angle must be, what, 180 minus 40 minus 90. That gives me 50 degrees, a classic 40, 50, 90 right triangle. So if this is 50, you know, that makes this 50. And if that's 40, well, that makes this 40. So I end up with a couple equations I can make up pretty easily. For instance, oh, actually, it looks like you have to use a little bit of substitution. That's a little complicated for being thrown at you first time around, but it's a skill from Algebra 1. You really should know how to do it. So let's go take a look. You know, this leads me to say a couple statements. I could say that 17x minus y is equal to 50. Okay, I could also state that 12x plus 4y is equal to 40. So if you recall way back when in Algebra 1, there was a couple of different ways of solving two variables, two equations, right? You could use substitution, which is what I usually like, or you can use elimination, which will work. It's very, very linear algebra-ish. I prefer substitution myself. So let's take this first one. Since we already have a single variable y, let's rearrange it for y. So just bring that 17x to the other side. And then divide that by -1. Okay, so now I have an expression for y. Let's go ahead and substitute that in. Right there. Okay, so I'll have 12x plus 4 times 17x minus 50. All right, well, it's a little more complicated than I thought it would be, but it's good to know. So let's finish it up. 12x is going to give me, what, 68x, and that's going to be 200. Let's consolidate our stuff over here. 240 on the right. Looks like I'm going to get solid 80x on the left. So x, once you divide both sides by 80, it's just same thing as basically you can cut out that 0 there, and you'll get 3. So that's 3. If x is 3, what is y? Let's figure it out. Y is equal to 17 times 3 minus 50. It's 30 plus 21, 51. Oh, would you look at that? Y is 1. Student says that triangle MNP is congruent to RSP because the corresponding angles of the triangles are congruent. Describe the error in this statement. Well, I mean, it's not like what he said is wrong. You know, the angles are congruent, right? And this one is shared, so of course it's congruent via reflexive property. However, you can't just say that the triangles are congruent because the angles are congruent. Clearly, I'm going to go ahead and shade this in. You know, this is that one triangle I've done in yellow, the little one at the bottom. And the overlapping one I'll do in red. I mean, clearly they're not congruent. One's way bigger than the other, right? So to be congruent, they have to lay perfectly on top of each other, like stained glass. And that's not going to be the case here. So I would say, you know, strictly 3 congruent angles is insufficient evidence for triangle congruence, right? And, you know, I might answer intuitively, you know, it doesn't ensure size is the same. I guess I could be grammatically correct and put this first, huh? Oh well, I tried. Anyway, and the last homework problem, number 5. All right, suppose we have 2 sets of congruent triangles. All right, looks a little complicated. Oh wait, look, these are the same. And A is equal to 90, and F is equal to 20. What would H be? Okay, so to think about this here. If A is 90, well, before we even begin, look at this. The first triangle, second triangle, up the second triangle again, and then the third triangle. This should be, you know, reminding you of a similar thing we've seen before. I'll spell it out for you. If you recognize this by now, hopefully, this is the transitive property. Okay. So that means that if A is 90, then so is E and so is G. And if B is 20, if F is 20, then so is I. So H will be, of course, found by using the triangle sum theorem, right? So 180 is equal to 90 plus 20 plus the measure of angle H. What's that, 110? 180 minus 110 is 70. So angle H, 70. Let's hope that that's there. Oh, there it is. Cool. All right, well, that's the homework. And I'll be sure to figure out something else for you to do whilst I am out. Alrighty? Have a good one.